Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are on K1 and I'm Tony Jacobin. Always a pleasure to be with you. In the series Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability, the topic of the day will be from CSR to corporate governance. So what are we going to evoke? We are going to evoke the evolution from an historic point of view of the relationship between shareholders, managers, directors, and employees. Don't forget it. On the first hand, we're going to see as well different models that exist in terms of corporate governance. What does it imply, and what does it mean this change from corporate social responsibility to corporate governance? This is the agenda, globally speaking. So, when we have an historic perspective, if we pick up the IFC web, you can see that normally when we're talking about corporate governance, it's a relationship between these three bodies, shareholders, directors, and managers. So shareholders appoint the director oversees the managers, and they act an agent, manager act for an agent for shareholders. On the other hand, managers, they report to directors, they report to shareholders, and they pay them. Okay, pretty simple. Now, what is important? Well, what happened is that before, let's say, before the big crisis of 1929, let's say we can say that the split of the value between the four categories of people, shareholder, directors, managers, and employee, was not really equal. Employees were suffering a lot, and let's say that after the crisis of 1929, the emergence of a totalitarist party from extreme right to extreme left affected almost all countries. It affected Italy, it affected Spain, it affected Germany, it affected Russia, it affected US as well. Many people don't know it, but there was a coup that was supported by Dupont and JP Morgan in the 30s, just to prevent FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to assume the power. Finally, unfortunately, Butler said no, but when saying so, I'm just saying that there was a big problem in all these countries. So what happened is after Second World War, the political leaders, with some support of the industry, it's true, realized that it was not possible to grow without respecting the employees. So many safety nets were created in terms of pension, job indemnity, and welfare state, just to avoid such a big difference of income among people. Really important to realize it. This generation had a social view at all levels, and this is the reason why this was maintained without any problem until under the 30 glorious years, as they said, les 30 glorieuses, we say in French. And from the beginning of the crisis of the oil in the 70s, it began changing. But it was still maintained, because there was still the threat of communism in Western countries. Therefore, there was a huge interest to keep it. But as soon as the collapse of the Communist Party became obvious in Eastern Europe first and in former Soviet Union afterwards, well, what happened is that progressively but surely, share owners took back the power, as was the case, because there was no alternative. So employees lose their power first for a manager, then in favor of directors, and favor of shareholders. So this is, to a certain extent, a big problem, because if you contrast it with the situations that we had, for instance, in the recent European Union election, you can see that in almost all countries there are some populist parties that are emerging again. There's the rise of extremist party. I'm not saying these are totalitarians at this point, but there's a rise, and it can be explained by the always lowest part of value creation that is given to employees. I'm not saying that it should be done as it was the case before. I know that the world is global. There are opportunities that are provided in Asia, in Latin America, and in Africa by their workforce. So it's obvious that maybe the value given by the employees need to be rethought. No doubt about it. But it's sure that as a fundamental factor in the performance of Western firms in the last 70 years, they should be far more taken into consideration. Okay, so I wanted to precise it because otherwise, when you've got too many differences in terms of income, it becomes a problem. JP Morgan, someone we cannot accuse of being communist, used to say that, founder of the bank, that basically the difference of wage shouldn't go above 1 to 25. When we are talking right now for a company listed in the stock exchange, we're talking about difference of income. I'm not including the stock, I'm not including the per diem, I'm not including any other advantage that the CEO may have. We're talking about a difference about 1 to 400. This is the reason why there's a problem. Okay, so really important to think about it, about this way on how to harmonize the relationship between these four players. Now, when we're talking about the different models that exist, well, basically, we can see that there's three major models. One would be the English-speaking country tradition, where there's only one board of directors and a few people that are within these boards that have to make the controls. This is a control committee. Then you've got traditionally the German tradition. It is becoming always more important, where you've got management board on the left and supervisory board. So their relationship, and by not putting the same people everywhere, it protected. And then you've got an ordinary system, where typical Italian style, where you've got one, oops, where is it? I lost it. Sole director, board director, and control, and people that are here. Okay, so why is it important? Well, it's important because when we look at this, we see that there are many critical issues when we're talking about corporate governance. Please, if you can look at the trust issues, you will understand it even better. Ethics become always more problematic in companies. You've got always more scandal, and it's a problem. Environment, no change, so it's becoming worse as well. Regulation, it's inefficient because the major players right now are so powerful that they can prevent the state or the international bodies to create good regulation. Independence, well, until what extent can we say that the independent advisors are independent in the board when they know that if they are not docile enough, basically, they won't be renewed their job. So it's really difficult remuneration. We already saw it. And employees, well, we can see that you've got lots of precarity. And this means that they won't be, they are aware that if they speak and basically it's not well accepted, well, pressure can increase and they may lose a job. If they don't want to move away if their region of origin, it can be even more difficult. So what can we say? First, the advent of corporate governance occurred before the advent of CSR, basically because in the 70s, at the moment of the crisis of the oil shock crisis in 1973, manager wanted to already some more power. And when they wanted to have some more power, it was at the expense of employees. And afterwards, director wanted to have more power, so it was again at the expense of the employees. And it's only afterwards then corporate governance appears. But we are already in the 90s. Okay, so as the advent of CSR as such, as it is well known, is was in 2001, so lots of time. Okay, and so this is the first aspect that you need to keep in mind. The second one is that many people, when we're talking about CSR, they consider it would be a reduction of wealth distribution. What should be logical, because if you say if we want to be want to take into consideration social and environmental issues, well, this is what we should get. And finally, well, it doesn't work like that. It's the opposite. So it's obvious that there's a kind of failure of CSR to solve this issue, and it should bother far more than it does currently. This, let's say, academic bodies, just to say what can we do in order to change it. So this is one aspect, and that need to be considered. And here you got something that is even more interesting, is that you can see that, hey, where does wealth creation can be to a certain extent more in favor of employees? Well, it's in emerging countries. Why? Because they're able to leave the bottom of the pyramid, and they get access to it. I'm not saying it's done through a perfect equal process. No, no, you've got lots of inequalities in these countries. Nevertheless, these people come from earning less than $2 per day to reaching some wages that are much more, well, are much better. They're not perfect yet. They should go even higher, but they could be around 5,000 USD, 10,000 USD per year. So it's far from being perfect, but it's a big change already. And in that sense, what should happen in the following year is just to say, what can we do if we are companies and portfolio as a board? How can we work committed to our stakeholders? How can and what type of priorities should we give to our community of origin, where we're stemming from? What type of priority should we have in order to help emerging countries to grow? And how can you balance your compromise respecting all stakeholders? This is something that is really important, because otherwise, sooner or later, there will be collapse. And this is what we should try to avoid. Okay, so this is it. A bit more holistic speech maybe at the end, but it's important to be aware about possible aftermath of our act. Okay, thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure as ever to be with you on K21. Bye bye. Have a nice day.